Hello, YouTube. Hi, everybody. Again, welcome to the Stress-Free Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It's good to be here. We were in super high res, very large, extremely um, big format there because we switched from 720 to more spectacular 1080, so we catch all the nuances. Um, and it's funny because I set this before; it's a little dark. Let's brighten it up. Hey, 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 hey. What do you know? Good to be here. Hope everybody's doing well. Big Bill Head, yeah, exactly. Speaking of big bill heads, got a new T-shirt to show you guys. Then we'll get that out of the way so we don't get, bogged down with that too much. I just saw this. I thought it was kind of cute. Ready? Here we go. Okay, it's my new science fiction spring summer line here. Okay, isn't that epic? I love it. I love it. I just love it. I think it's awesome. Humanity. Oh yeah. Payback is a bitch. Exactly right. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a fun thing. Um, if you want to get it, it's at a place called T Public. Um, and Yeah, I thought it was great. Well, thank you very much. We're hearing all the Swen said that Bill, great interview with Ben at Daily Wire. Thank you. T Public, Steve Whoop is the name of the place. Just search for aliens on teepublick.com. I want to say is where I got it. I've got a really fun one I'm going to be bringing in next week that'll make everybody happy because unless things go somewhat astray, we're going to have at least bring back the Gorn next Monday. So I know everybody's been wondering how he's doing. And we got some nice words about the Mike Rowe podcast as well. Thank you very much. It was a fun show for the Mike Rowe podcast because, uh, basically going into it, I was going to be talking about Empire of Terror like pretty much the whole time. And ended up talking mostly about storytelling and University of Florida and David Shelton and um, editing and Hollywood notes and all the rest of the stuff. So just a fun time. Thank you very much. It was really kind of all of you for the kind words. He's a great guy. He's fun to be with. Now, as I mentioned, when I went down there to do the podcast, we also did 4 pilot episodes of a TV show he's pitching, where he basically comes out and does his usual micro shtick. He's a one-trick pony. You got to know the trick, right? So now he'll come out and he'll read a story, and they produce the story pretty well. I mean, they go to a fair amount of production trouble, and they're illustrating the story with video. And then afterwards, uh, I come in and we talk about what he got right and what he got wrong, and that was just really really fun. So I'm hoping that that'll be a regular thing, and he's pitching it to a couple places, and I don't think that's ready yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So that was exciting. And then on the same day that they released the Mike Rowe podcast, they also got me the trailer for Empire of Terror, which opened yesterday as we record this. Um, I had gotten the link to the first episode, and I saw the first episode the same time all of you did, or at least within, I don't know, a couple hours. The last version I saw had my final notes in it, and I'd seen that version several times, but I'd never seen the version that had the final notes included, which was the broadcast version. And I just couldn't be happier with it. Um, I really just couldn't be happier with it. For those of you who have seen it, um, the um, the opening title sequence that they put together is just I just think it's the best main titles of any documentary series I've ever seen. I love it. And that's great. So I have some very good news, actually. So I've been working real hard on this for you guys. I've been talking about this forever, going back to at least Empire of Terror before the Frank Luke thing. I was able to get from Daily Wire an agreement to have a 30-day free trial membership at Daily Wire for existing BillWhittle.com members and for any new BillWhittle.com members. So you will be able to take a look at all of the stuff that I've had to be working on. I haven't had to been, but that I chose to be working on over the last several years, really going back to 2019, and which took a lot of time away from the stuff that members have been paying for, like our regular programs and things like that. Um, I don't know how long it's going to be running for. I think it's going to run for a month. So I know this is a little confusing, but basically, here's the deal. I asked them to hold on to it for a little bit because I'm not quite ready for it yet. I think probably next week or the week after that, certainly. Um, it probably makes, I want to make sure that the 30 days of the offer, it's a 30-day offer, but the 30-day offer lasts for 30 days. And I don't want the clock to start just yet. I want to be ready to go out and do a new membership drive. Because the nice thing about this was, and I made this crystal clear, now when I go do the next membership drive, I can say become a member of BillWhittle.com, cancel anytime if you'd like. And if you decide to do that, it includes a free 30-day trial of Daily Wire, so you can see all of the historical series that I've done and that I'm going to continue to do, and some of which we may do outside of Daily Wire. So that's just really great. Oh, it's the State of the Union tonight, isn't it? Yeah, well, I think we can pretty much just get the transcript and slow it down and botch a few lines, and you pretty much get the gist of it. So anyway, um, so that's something I've been wanting very, very badly and for a very long time. And I spoke with the new, not with the new, with their membership, not their. I spoke with their marketing person, Dana, who, strange and happy coincidence, their chief of marketing, Dana Commendatore, was from LA. Was part of the LA crowd before they moved Daily Wire from LA to Nashville. And Dana's husband, Mike, was the guy who got me into Friends of Abe. It was Mike who basically was a fan of the blog. I hadn't even started doing the videos yet, and said, you ought to come and check out this group. Michael Broderick, a great actor, former Marine, or a retired Marine, I suppose I should say. So I got, just say includes free 30, that's a great point. Bart Treasure says, don't say trial, just say free. Includes free 30 days of Daily Wire. That's the kind of advice I could use gallons of and wagons of. But yes, that's definitely a much better way of putting it. So in any event, non-active duty Marine. Thank you very much, Darth Chuck. In any event, so I told her about this and how I've been feeling so bad about taking so much time away from our BillWhittle.com output in order to get these historical series out. And she said, yeah, no problem. And so theoretically, we could keep doing it again every 6 months or something. My point to them was there's pretty much nobody who's a fan of my shows or who hasn't at least heard of Daily Wire. And given Daily Wire's marketing department, it's not like it's nothing but good for both of us, because we will convert a number of people who will get the Daily Wire the free Daily Wire 30 days as a result of signing up. And so in any event, so is my new website ready for new members? No, my website got to about 85% finished. I like the way it looks very, very much. There's still a lot of little bugs we have to knock out of it. And I am still on, oh, thank you, Bart. I'll take you up on that. If you can send your email address to info@billwhittle.com, I will take you up on that. That's very, very kind of you. Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. So, hey, guess what? I'm still working on the Frank Luke thing, which is now a 4-part miniseries. That's how it's going in. It's not like I haven't been working, and it's not like I've been lazy. I've been here every day. But every single scene is just, what I found out is I actually wrote a pretty good buddy movie. A really pretty good buddy movie. And here's where I'm a little fortunate, because I happen to know Mr. Boring quite well. He commissioned a movie screenplay, which is 120 pages. I am now on page 269, I want to say. It's going to be 300 by the time it's done. But I also happen to know that Jeremy's favorite entertainment of any kind ever, his all-time single greatest favorite thing, happened to be Lonesome Dove. And so, don't tell him I said this, because I haven't spoke to him yet. I haven't heard from him about Empire of Terror yet. But in any event, So Lonesome Dove was a 4-part miniseries. And so I can basically say to him, Jeremy, I don't know what to tell you. This story writes itself. I just type it. I'm not, I've got nothing to do with it. It just comes down and goes out. But it's Lonesome Dove. And you could have taken the 4-part miniseries Lonesome Dove and cut a 90-minute or a 120-minute movie out of it. But that wouldn't have been Lonesome Dove, and you wouldn't have liked it very much. And that's the situation I find myself in. So that's my final fallback position. So it's 4 scripts. It's and is Eric here? He must be. He's always here. He's got nothing else to do with his life, obviously. Just double see. I didn't specifically see him, but I can't imagine that. Yes, there he is. Okay. Reason I'm asking is because no, I saw him up earlier. Because I was saying I was going to call this thing the fullback. It just came to my head as I was kind of freestyling here on Stratosphere Lounge Show. I wasn't actually going to call it the fullback, but when I was talking about it, I said, I might call it the fullback. And Eric said, you really need to call this movie the fullback, as did a number of other people. So that's what I'm going to call it. It's a much better title than The Streak. So this series is going to be called The Fullback, and then there are 4 episode titles. Episode 1 is State Champion. Episode 2 is Yellow. Episode 3 is Balloon Buster. And episode 4 is The Stand. Now, I could never call this movie The Stand because of The Stand movie, but you can call it The Fullback Part 4, The Stand, which should make Steve Skinner happy, makes me happy. Yeah, because if you're of a certain age, every time you hear The Streak, it's like, I was never completely happy with it, but it was the best thing I could think of. But The Fullback has got a nice ring to it. And once I realized that's what I was going to probably call it, I'll tell you what's been really fun about this. Especially the last stuff that I've been writing, I get to write about legends, like real life legends. So I had a scene much earlier where Billy Mitchell's giving a briefing prior to the St. Mihiel offensive. And so I got to write for Billy Mitchell, who I admire very much. For those who are not familiar, Billy Mitchell was court-martialed for basically saying to the Army Air Service, and as well as, he just pissed off everybody in the military. He was the one who said that airplanes can sink battleships. The Navy laughed him out of the room. They took a old German World War I battleship, towed it out there, and Billy Mitchell's bombers sank it in short order. I want to say that was the Ostfriedland, actually, but I'm not 100% sure. In any event, so Billy Mitchell's a hero of mine because he bucked the system and he died of a heart attack at 50. I mean, 50 something. He was very young. He was very healthy, robust guy. Spent a lot of time outdoors. But I just finished writing a scene where this is where I have pegs where I know things actually happened, and after Luke and his partner Joe Werner got good at this, they planned a specific balloon busting mission at nighttime, and Billy Mitchell came down to the airfield where Luke's squadron was and Rickenbacker's squadron was. So I know for a fact that Billy Mitchell, Eddie Rickenbacker, Major Hartney, who was in command of First Pursuit Group, I should say, and Luke and Werner were there. So I got to write a scene that had Billy Mitchell, Eddie Rickenbacker, and Frank Luke in it, and it's really fun. And I know this is generally more of a Stratosphere Studio issue, but we'll get to questions in a minute. This is where you kind of get where you can be, if you do the research, you can be really creative. So Luke was a football team captain. I didn't know until very recently that Werner also was a captain of his football team. So I'm looking, these guys are having a conversation, Billy Mitchell's coming down from Mount Olympus to hear about this crazy pilot who just flamed 6 balloons in 3 days. And I'm looking at Billy Mitchell's youth, and I'm looking for, did he play football? He did not. At least I couldn't find it. He dropped out of college early, and but he was an outdoorsman. He went hunting and fishing and stuff. And Luke says, "Yeah, I used to do that too. I used to go out hunting and fishing. We used to go out to, we'd ride out to the San Carlos, and out by out by Fort Apache. Used to go fishing and hunting out there." And Billy Mitchell was a horseman. You see, that's what he was. He was a real horseman. He loved horses. So when Frank gets to say, "Yes, yeah, yes, sir, me too. I used to go riding out um, to the San Carlos, fish the San Carlos, and hang out by Fort Apache there." He said, "You're a horseman." He said, and then I got a line that I like from Luke, because I got to connect. I want Luke and Mitchell to have this connection. So Mitchell says, "You're a horseman," and Luke says, "Yes, sir. I love horses better than I love airplanes." And Mitchell says, "That's well said. You and I have a lot in common, young man." "It would seem so." "Yes, sir. Well, maybe we can sit and talk about these things someday after we get this damn war over." And 3 days later, he goes on vacation for 5 days, but within the week, he's pretty much gone. So anyway, that was great. It's coming along. The good news is, of the 4 parts, part 1 is finished, part 2 is finished, part 3 is finished, and part 4 is about halfway through. So there is actual progress on this. Patrick LaBelle says in YouTube that there's a movie on Mitchell with Gary Cooper, who would be perfect for Billy Mitchell. And it's just fun to write about that stuff. This is where you have a little bit of artistic license. We know they were there. Nobody knows what they said. We just know that they talked about the mission, and that afterwards Luke was congratulated by Billy Mitchell. So I have a scene where just after Lucas flamed they went out to flame 2 balloons, and they ended up getting 3. Luke called. This is in some bit of dispute, but most sources say this actually happened. That Luke basically pulled a Babe Ruth, where he basically points to right field, and then the next pitch smacks it home run out there. But apparently, with Mitchell on the field and Rickenbacker and all the rest of the squadrons there, Luke had just gotten famous for flaming 3 balloons the day before, and he apparently said to Billy Mitchell, he said, "Keep your eye on the left-hand balloon. That one's going to go up at 7:03 p.m. in about half an hour. At 7:03, that's going to go, and then the one on the right is going to go 4 minutes later." And that's exactly what happened. And then Werner got one on the way back. So when Mitchell sees that he's come down to see if they can flame 1 balloon and they get 3, I've got a scene where Mitchell calls General Pershing, and Pershing is congratulating everybody. You never hear his voice. You see him earlier in the movie, but he's just on the phone. "Yes, sir. I'll be sure to tell him." And it's fun. It's fun to be able to take Billy Mitchell and Blackjack Pershing and Eddie Rickenbacker and Frank Luke, and they were there. They were there. I didn't make it up. So something must have happened. Anyway, so much for that. This is our Stratosphere Lounge show, which tends to be a little more political than the studio show. But I am very happy with Empire of Terror. I had not seen it audio mixed. My last set of notes hadn't been put in, and it hadn't been color corrected. All of those things have been done. And I think it looks fantastic. So if you're one of those people who want to see it and haven't seen it, and you're not a member at Daily Wire, I'm not discouraging you from becoming a member at Daily Wire. But if you're a BillWhittle.com member, you will get to spend 30 days free at Daily Wire, which would be plenty of time to see not only Empire of Terror, but the Apollo 11 What We Saw series, the Cold War What We Saw series. They shoehorned this into the What We Saw series at the last kind of minute, because now I think it's like What We Saw season 4 or 3, an Empire of Terror. So yeah, and the trailer, Scorch, I just saw the trailer. It looks amazing. They did an incredible job with the lighting and the sets. So it just gets better and better. I got a congratulatory text from the guy who's in charge of their their nonfiction stuff over there, Dave Wermos, who I worked with on Cold War and worked with on Empire of Terror. Dave's just a terrific guy, and he just sent me a very nice text saying, you know, it just looks great. And I said, Dave, you're the guy who hired the people. I think it's the best looking documentary I've ever seen, and I was just real happy with it. And and then thank you, Gummins. I'll get to that in a second. Um, and so he sent me this nice text. We went back and forth, and he sent me. I said, I think he said his wife was. I think he texted me later in the day to say they were looking at the thing, and his wife just couldn't stop talking about how well researched it was and how well delivered it was, and all these very, very kind words. And I said, well, please tell her tell her from me with the greatest respect that she can stop now. And he wrote me back in Latin. So I wrote him back in Latin. We were just doing Latin back and forth. And my last Latin quote was something, 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 Google, something, something, something. I wrote him in Latin. Google is my servant, and I am Google's servant. But that's the kind of guy Dave is. And it was tremendous. The last thing I said to him was, I said, hey, here's a little teaser for you. What we saw, season 4, The Navy. He said, ooh, I like that. That's got a nice kind of a ring to it. I said, yeah, The Navy. Presented by the only historian who is able to make a actual landing on a carrier in a modern fighter jet. I can do it on the PC. That doesn't mean anything, but I can also do it at Miramar. That does mean something. So that'd be fun. It would be season 5. They have, for some reason or another, not included America's Forgotten Heroes. Now, as it turns out, when we shot the Cold War, which would be back in, golly, I guess October or something, or even earlier than that. When the hell did we shoot? I've lost track of when we did these things. But in any event, there was also not just talk. There was also agreement that we were going to shoot America's Forgotten Heroes as video, because like the Cold War, America's Forgotten Heroes were audio only. We went out and shot the Cold War, which I thought turned out very, very well. I was very pleased with that. And then there we go. Somebody, Infidel says, Bill, I heard somebody favorably compare your history podcast to those of Dan Carlin. Was that Mike Rowe? Because I heard him mention this name and I didn't know the name. And I suppose I probably should. But anyway, the thing about, I'll just wrap this whole Daily Wire thing up with this. And Natasha points this out to me frequently when I start lamenting the fact that I just get these things and they're just so much work. Which I like doing. It's just that I'm just so far behind on story mechanics and all the rest of this stuff. But she said, what's obvious? And she said that there's no way that you could ever do any of this stuff like this on your own. And that she thinks, and I think, and I've heard people think, that the stuff that our members of BillWhittle.com allow me to do for Daily Wire, that's how it works. They don't pay me enough to make this my full-time job. And as I've said so many times, I'm so grateful to our existing members for having put up with me putting so much time and effort into these Daily Wire things. But the short form answer is none of this would have been possible without Daily Wire, and none of it would have been possible without the members of BillWhittle.com either. So I think that Apollo 11, Cold War, Empire of Terror, I believe that these things are going to be around for a while. I think they're important. Mike was very kind to say that he thinks they should be basically required reading in required viewing in high school. And I'm always a little reluctant to make anything required, but honestly, I think when you see all 8 episodes of Empire of Terror, you won't be able to make this case for, hey, communism's just awesome, just it was never done right before. Our good friend Clay Bradley texted me and said, hey, I'm just about to watch the first episode. And I said, great, let me know what you think. He sent me 2 texts back. He said, I'm about halfway through it and I don't know if I can finish it. It's just really hard to watch. And then he sent another one saying, well, I managed to get through it. And I said, well, and he said, it's very nice. He said, thanks for the kind words. And then it's going to get worse. In episode 6, I just do nothing but take those lights in the Lubyanka down to blood red, and I do about a 22-minute block quote. I talked about this before. Uh, that my entire challenge during Empire of Terror, David Booty says Empire of Terror should be a treeware version which will survive the digital apocalypse. Uh, I'll come back to that idea, Dave. It's an interesting thought. Um, uh, but my entire challenge was, I cannot make this. It's a legal case. It's not a history presentation. It's not entertainment. It's a legal case. And since it's a legal case, I wanted to make sure that everything that I was claiming was not an assertion on my part. Um, uh, so I I found a quote. I found a book about the about Lenin's terror, the Red Terror. Stalin's terror was the Great Terror, which was larger by many orders of magnitude, but certainly no less barbaric. And so I've got a guy who was there with the receipts. He's got pictures of people, and he said, "This guy who's had his face hacked off. That's this guy. That's his name." And here's the other guy who's his friend, who's got his arms been, just been chopped off or whatever. And so I had so many quotes from that, and I found that book probably 4 days before I turned the script in, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I looked hard, really hard for it. I looked for it for months, something like it. I didn't know what. I just knew I needed some first person kind of thing. And and he talks about the author. I think Melganov, his name is. He talks about what he saw during the Red Terror. And I just take the lights to red, and I just quote him for 22 minutes or something like that. And it's unbelievable, unbelievable. Um, yeah, Roadrunner mentions the gloves. Yeah, they one of the many things that the Bolsheviks invented. They certainly didn't invent, couldn't make televisions or radios or houses or anything, but they were good at this kind of thing. They would take the hands of the people who were bourgeois, and I'm not talking about archdukes. I'm talking about bankers or doctors. And as for torture, what they would do is they'd take these people, they'd tie their hands together, and then they'd stick their hands in big old cauldrons of boiling water and leave their hands in there for about 20 minutes. And after that, they could pull their hands out. They would take these little hooks, and they made these things called bourgeois gloves because the skin would just come off. And there's these two gloves made out of human skin, and I've got photographs of it because I found this Melganov, I think his name was. I found his book, and I looked hard for that. It was I found it at the online National Archives, and it was like the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. Um, yeah, but in any event, you need to do that because that's what these people were about, and that's how they governed. That was their government style. Their government. I almost said that's their governance style, like I said, or the reason for governments. But then I realized no, what they really wanted was they wanted to torture people, and the government was just a fig leaf way for them to figure out how to do that. That's what the conclusion I've come to. We have a super chat here from Bedweather Biker who says, "Hey Bill, have you seen any of Mark Grubert's or Grubert's work at America's Untold Stories? That sounds a lot like America's Forgotten Heroes. It's entirely possible. I have not heard of him. I can't place the name. I might have heard it in passing and taken it from him. I certainly didn't take it from me. He's been doing it, I'm sure, longer than I have. He did a great episode on Billy Mitchell and also on Curtis LeMay. Sounds like a man after my own occupation, and I'd like to talk with him. Stop, time out, everybody. We got to stop the show here. Aesop's Retreat tells me that Biden is lying his ass off. That's a direct quote. We're doing this as the State of the Union speech is going on. So for those of you who are here watching, I normally say thank you for being here, but now at this point, I'm going to say you're welcome. What a joke. Anyway, part one is out of Empire of Terror. There are 8 episodes. the two episodes that I use um, are episodes 1 and 7. If I had to send out two for um, review, I talked with Dana over at Daily Wire. And I said, "There's one person I would really like to talk to on camera about Empire of Terror." And she said, "Who's that?" I said, "It's Jordan Peterson. I'd really, really like to talk to Jordan Peterson about this." Um, so she said, "Write a couple sentences," and I did. And I said, "Send these two episodes, and also here's a link to History of the Atomic Bomb and Eat the Rich and Guns." And the reason I want to talk to Jordan Peterson about it is because Jordan Peterson's the only person I ever saw who talked about the communists the way that other people talk about the Nazis. He's the only person I ever saw on this in this punditry game who talked about them with that same sort of visceral revulsion. He really got it, and I'd really like to get deep into this issue of right and wrong. I mean, I don't want to talk about the details of the Bolsheviks or the revolution or anything like that. I just want to talk about right and wrong and the difference between these two. Um, so I hope he says yes to that. I don't know whether he will or not, but I hope he says yes. It'll be a good conversation, and I'd like to do it. So he's hopefully done. I might get a chance to do his podcast with him. But I admire him enormously. Obviously, I think most people who've ever heard the man admire him enormously. And the thing I think that I like the most about Jordan Peterson is that he's not only incredibly bright. I mean, he's off the charts brilliant, but he has a soul and a heart, and you can move him. And sometimes he'll cry when emotions run very high, and I deeply admire that. I think that's the essential part of any effective teaching or storytelling, is the ability to connect with somebody on a human level. And Dr. Peterson is a very fine human being, and I'm very much hoping to get a chance to sit down and talk with him. I'd like to talk with him about Empire of Terror. There's a number of things I'd like to talk with him about, but we'll see. It should. I mean, he's under the Daily Wire umbrella, so it's the word will get to him, at least. I know that. I mentioned the Tim Pool podcast as well. I'd like to do that as well. So yeah, I want to talk about the morality of it, and the difference. The difference in episode 1. It's a fairly subtle thing, but episode 1 is it's called Innocent People, and the first chapter of episode 1, I broke it up into 15-20 minute chapters, usually 3 or 4 per episode. The first chapter is called A Modern City, because all of these bodies are still there in open. They're just, here's a field, just a field like a park, and I said, this is just like any other American park, except this isn't an American city. There's 60,000 murdered people buried in this nice little field. 60,000 murdered people buried in this field, and none of them know it. So we'll see. Anyway, yeah, Mark Levin would be great too. That's a great choice. Thank you, Gummins. That's a good recommendation, because you know what? That's such a good recommendation. I'm gonna write that one down, because I've had a chance to introduce Mark, and I don't know whether Jordan Peterson knows who I am, but I know that Mark Levin does, because I've had a chance to introduce him several times, and he's been very kind with me, and he's the kind of guy that I can talk with about this. And while I'm at it, I might as well mention Glenn Beck as well, because I know him. So anyway, that was that. All right, so why don't we jump into some questions here and see what we can find. But anyway, thank you again for all the kind words. It means the world to me, and especially after all of the um, time and stuff it took, and effort and all the rest of that jazz. Excuse me. I will be happy to get this Luke thing finished. Then we'll see what happens with it. But at least then I can get. There's just. I mean, I've got like at home. I've got a 10-foot wide projection screen. I've got the high intensity LED, or I guess it's a laser projector. For all of this is for the set of Story Mechanics. Oh, you guys are going to kick out of this. My friend Dick Rutan was in the hospital recently. I don't know if he's watching this or whether he sees it. Bert, I know, watches it every now and then. I'll read it verbatim here. So Dick was in the hospital. He had some kind of lung condition. You'll be pleased to know he's doing, apparently seems to be doing much better. But we have some mutual friends. And I talked to one friend of mine. Hang on, sorry. Where's the outbox? Inbox starts. Oh, sent. So anyway, I'd heard that Dick was in the hospital, and that when they admitted him, his blood oxygen level was in the 70 percentages. I don't know how you're alive in the 70s, but that's dangerous. And so I said to Dick, and he's recovering. He's back up in the mid 90s now in terms of his blood oxygen level. So I sent Dick a little email. I'll share this with you because we're all friends here. I said, "Hi, Dick. I was asking about you with that Brent Regan fella. He ratted you out. He said that when you arrived at the hospital, your blood oxygen content was somewhere in the 70% range. As a high-altitude, steely-eyed missile man test pilot, you do not need me to tell you how oxygen deprivation can destroy cognitive abilities. With these two facts in mind, I took the liberty of re-registering you as a Democrat. Please don't try and thank me, although I do have a 14-hour compilation of Joe Biden's speeches that I'd like you to translate for me. This is going to require some special gear, of course. I went ahead with the black leather for the restraints because nylon is so tacky, don't you think? But I simply couldn't guess whether you preferred silver, chrome, or gold for the eyewear. I normally prefer the gold, and then I've got the picture of Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange. The things prying his eyes open, being watched to watch it. So he thanked me for the levity. I was just rather pleased with that. Probably more pleased than I should be. All right, here we go. Let's go to the I need to log into my own website. Oh, we got a lot of response too about the DCS Strata Squadron, and I haven't answered any of them yet because I'm still trying to push this thing out the door. But that'll be something that is not part of our regularly scheduled program. It might be though. It'd be fun to do a squadron channel. In fact, I will do a squadron channel. Why the hell not? And we're gonna, anybody who's into flight simming, if you have a throttle, a joystick, a rudder pedals, and a head tracking thing like Track IR, then I don't care how advanced you are. We'll train you from the ground up because I love teaching flying, flight instruction stuff. All right, so here we go. Logged in. Natasha is going to come by sometime later on this evening, so I'm not going to run super late. And we are going to go to Home Depot, and I'm going to get some long thin slats of wood because I need to make some armatures to support our friend the Gorn and some other cutout characters who are going to get their time on camera in the very near future because I'm very nearly done with this thing, believe it or not. I still don't believe it. I'll believe it when I'm done, but I've only got about 30 pages left uh, of room, and I'm doing 10 or 15 a day, so we'll see. The members, and I'm looking forward to getting this website finished because I love the way it looks. We still got some problems, little bugs here and there, and some other issues. We're going to get all this stuff in line, and then we're going to do a big membership push. We'll get that out to everybody, but especially our members. Were very, 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 very happy that we got a chance to get that done because this has been bugging me for years, and it was easy. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do it every time we release something new. Stratosphere Launch questions for 3724. Curated by Ian Nolan. Ian, thank you so much. All of you guys are so terrific. I haven't heard from Marusha in a long time. If anybody knows if he or she is okay, I would love to hear. I'm concerned when I don't hear from Marusha Dark. Okay, here we go. Ian Nolan, second attempt, got diverted last week by a super chat. Let me just see what I got here. I got an Ian Nolan, got a Roadrunner, got a Jacob Belchick, got an Eric Blake, got a Bob Knife, got a Roadrunner, got a Steve Young, Chris Taylor, Ray Juarez, two Ray Juarez's second attempt, which I'm glad you did. You got a Charles Tomes. Okay, well, we will do our very best to get through all of these. I don't think I'll be able to do duplicates, but we'll get through. We'll get everybody once. So, Ian Nolan, second attempt. Thank you, Ian. I'm sorry we missed you the first time. Hey, Bill, going to try and ask a question that's got some nuance to it, so please read the whole thing before answering and reacting. Fair enough. Glad you added that. Oh, and somebody asked about my cat. I'm sorry, before I get into these questions. Yeah, so let me just get this out of the way. I've had this cat since 2010, since I got it at a rescue shelter. I used to had this kind of affectation. The first cat I ever had was named Reno, and then the second cat I had was named Texas, and then I was on Pismo Beach when I decided I really needed to get another cat, so I named him Pismo, and so the fourth one I named Tahoe, but I never call him Tahoe. It's his veterinary name, but I just call him Bean. Bean was diagnosed with diabetes. He was really getting thin, and took him in 6-7 years ago now. And so for 5,000 times, I guess, I think I posted something about this not too long ago. He gets a shot of insulin in the daytime, shot of insulin at night. And thanks to these tremendous vets and miracle modern technology and our members who allow me to go buy insulin for cats, which is in itself kind of a miracle when you think about it. Natasha spent some time in Bali several months ago. Went to visit her daughter, my stepdaughter, there. And while she was gone, I came back from work, and I found my cat just like splayed out, his arms like wide. He pooped himself, and he was barely breathing. He was really unresponsive, and I thought, my God, he's gone for sure. I thought for sure I'd lost him. Got him in the carrier, got him in the car. Fortunately, the vet's just a 5-minute drive away from the house. Ran him in there. They took him in the back, and I honestly did not think I was going to see him again. This was Roadrunner just said, mentioned he lost his dog last week to kidney failure. We all know what that's like. At least for what it's worth, this is how I deal with it. For what it's worth, and this is the only way I can deal with it. It's the only thing that has kept me sane in losing these animals, and that is that this is what they cost. And what I mean by that is you could have avoided the pain of losing your dog if you had never had the dog. Is that a deal you wanted to make? It's not a deal I want to make. So that's how I handle all of these losses of pets. Doesn't apply to humans, but for pets, it's like, okay, yeah, this is horrible. This really is killing me. But I could have avoided all this pain by not having the cat. This is the cost. This is what it costs. Dave Big Booty said, grief is the price we pay for love. Exactly. And the more you love them, the more it hurts. That's the deal. Anyway, after he'd been in there, The doctor came out real casual. This is not this recent time. The last time was a year ago, a little less than, and said, "Yeah, he's fine." We gave him a sedative, calmed down a little bit, and he just seems like he had a blood sugar crash, but he's just fine. I thought, oh, thank God. Um, and then since then, he's had a number of episodes. He's probably had 5 or 6 of these episodes where all of a sudden he just doesn't know where he is, and he'll start walking around the house, the perimeter of the house, just like walking around every corner. If I pet him, he'll purr, but he doesn't know where he is or who I am, and those are alarming. But after the first one, um, louder. See if I can get this a little closer. I'm pretty much peaking out. If you're talking about volume, I'm pretty much in the red here, just where it should be on levels for outputs. Uh, uh, what's it, DKS? So hopefully that's good for you. Anyway, I realize now that that was probably a high blood sugar situation. As a small aside, when I was a limo driver living on Butterfinger bars, when I got out here in '88, I started driving a limousine out here in '88 and did it until about '91, '92. And I was under a constant state of stress, and I was very, very um, constantly on the move and crazy thin, and my blood sugar was just all over the place. So I would start to see this kind of shimmering. There'd be like this little kind of shimmering, like this electric effect, and it would just sort of widen up, and over the space of about 4 or 5 minutes, just be like the entire visual field. And and I thought, okay, but I mean, I was just just I was 30 something and just turned 30, and I wasn't eating very well. So anyway, there it was. Uh, but one time I was driving back. I had just dropped off a passenger in San Marino. Our office was in San Marino. Dropped a passenger off in Pasadena, and I'm heading back to the dispatch office. And I look up and I realize I don't know where I am. I know that I know the neighborhood. I know that I've been in this neighborhood for the last 3 years, multiple times a day, driving back to the office, but I don't know how to get back to the office from here. And it began to dawn on me that I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember my social security number, couldn't remember my name, couldn't remember any phone numbers. That's back when we used to be able to remember our phone numbers. I couldn't remember anything. Uh, and I got on the radio and I said, if anybody has passengers in the car, if you want to turn this down just for the next 2 or 3 minutes, had the common sense to do that. Um, and so I got on the radio and I talked to the dispatcher who I knew really well, and I said, "Hey, Greg, I'm at this street and this street, and I don't remember how to get back to the studio. I mean to the office. I don't know what the matter is, but I can't remember anything, really." So he basically talked me back. Um, and then when I walked into the dispatch office, he looked at me and said, "Oh God." I said, "What?" He said, "Don't look in the mirror." I said, "Okay, why?" He says, "Because you're whiter than a piece of paper, man. Sit down. We're going to call an ambulance." "Oh, I don't have to call an ambulance." "Yeah, we're calling an ambulance." So they called the ambulance. And it turned out, I don't know what my blood sugar was, but it was way, 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 way off the charts. I suspect now, after this last incident, which happened just a couple days ago on Monday, um, that that's a case where Bean's blood sugar has gotten too high, because I don't know why I never put the two together before now, but that's almost certainly what it was. Um, Now, with all this said, his veterinarian says that he's the most stable cat he's ever seen. We've been on 6 units of insulin in the morning, another 6 at night. Been on that for years. He said he's rock solid on the thing. So anyway, um, last Monday, um, I got up, came in early to be working on the movie, and Lord Bio says, "Can you get a cat's blood sugar the way you can a human's?" Yes, you can, and the numbers are the same. I mean, cat's blood sugar is different numbers than a human's, but the testing things, they you could just take a little spot of blood out of this little vein on their ear. So that the testing things that you would get at CVS, they work perfectly well for giving us a number that we need to test. Anyway, um, he has occasionally had these moments where he's just kind of lost. And I was here at home, and Natasha called me and said, you know, this happened right at the SpaceX launch on Monday because I was outside with Shelley, our office manager, trying to see the launch. I got a call from Natasha, you need to come home. What is it? Was Bean's really not doing well? I said, is it different than a regular episode? She goes, yeah, it's real bad. So fly home. And she had found him just splayed out. It's a hard thing to see with with an animal, a cat, with their lying with their face on the ground and their arms are spread out to the side like that. And I came in and I said, "Is he breathing?" She said, "Yeah, he's breathing barely. His eyes were kind of glassy." And I got the carrier and put him in the carrier. And once I picked him up, he started freaking out for a minute. So that actually was a relief. Ran him down to the vet again. I'm comforting myself by saying on the way to the vet that, okay, so we've been here before, and the first time I thought for sure he was gone, but it's probably just his blood sugar's gone nuts, so everything should be fine. So I get there. Another small aside: they're very, very busy vet. They're great, and in Santa Monica, in Sherman Oaks, they're great. But there was a room full of people, and I came in the back there and I said, I've got a medical emergency, and they just parted like the Red Sea and took Bean in the back, and next thing I know, there's 4 technicians working on him. So I'm out front, and Natasha's with me. She said, I'm glad you had him, because I don't know if I would have said that, I probably would have waited in line. And the doctor said a number of people do wait in line when they have pet emergencies. They're just too polite to want to cut in. And I'm built that way. I really am. I'm built that way. It's just something I just realized it's just ridiculous. If I was waiting in line to have my cat's teeth cleaned or something, and somebody comes in and says I've got an emergency, I'm not going to have any problem with that person jumping in front of me. So anyway, we're waiting outside, and I'm waiting for the doctor to come out and say, yeah, everything's fine. But they come out and say, so what exactly did you give him? I said, same thing as always. I give him 6 units in the morning, 6 units at nighttime. And she says, Prozac, right? I said, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I said, I mean, he's doing okay, right? She goes, well, it's touch and go. Touch and go. She goes, yeah. She said, I see from your chart that you had a situation like this, 8 months ago or whatever it was, 9 months ago. I said, yeah. She said, well, his blood sugar is supposed to be minimum of 60. When he came in last time, he was 22. And now we just tried to test his blood and we can't get a reading. You can't get a reading? No, we're not detecting any blood sugar at all, none. So he's in real danger here. We're doing our best. So they're giving him glucose and they're putting Karo syrup in his mouth and all the rest of this stuff. And I thought, man, this is it. So anyway, we're waiting for nearly an hour, and and I'm telling Natasha, I said, honey, every minute that goes by is bad news. Last time he recovered quickly and the doc came out and he was fine. The longer they're in there with him, the more they're fighting. This should be something that should be cleared up pretty quickly. So after about an hour's worth of waiting, I get this terrific combination. Okay, well, he's doing better. Looks like he's getting stabilized. Oh, thank goodness. But we did x-rays on him and we found something. We found a mass on his x-rays that we don't like. Oh, great. Okay. So we go into the back of the vet's office and they've got all those metal cages there. That's where I found him. I got him out of a metal cage at the Northridge Animal Shelter here in Los Angeles. So that was a similar experience. It's okay, everybody. Everybody's being very kind and saying so sorry, but the story's not over yet. So so I go back there and he's had a little sedation, but he's there, and I stick my head all the way in the cage and he's purring, and and it's like, okay, he certainly seems to be fine on the blood sugar thing, at which point I would normally be saying, fantastic, great, terrific. And then I say this is not his regular doctor, by the way. And I basically said, okay, what can you tell me about this other thing? So she takes me over and shows me this x-ray, and he's got this giant mass on the side of his body. It's big. She says, I don't know if it's on the liver, in the liver, or the pancreas, but it's there, it's something. And we're going to need to do ultrasound to find out where it is. I said, is it operable? She says, I don't know yet. And I said, Jesus, it's the size of his heart, you know, I mean, it's big. And I said, have you ever seen anything that large before? And she said, yeah, yes, many times bigger than this. Don't worry, you know, we need a plan. We'll come up with a plan. I thought, okay. Oh, and for those of you who want, well, I'm not going to mention something because people they found the link to this T-shirt on TeePublic, I think it is. Anyway, so that was nice to hear. And what I think happened was, I usually don't get home until pretty late. I've been here a lot. I'm not trying to, you know, um, I'm not looking for any mercy or pity or anything. I'm just saying I've been here, usually don't get out of here much before midnight. And that particular day I got in early, so I gave him his night shot late and his morning shot early. So instead of it being 12 hours between shots, it was probably 7 or 8. But I think what happened was he hadn't eaten the night before, and I didn't feed him before I gave him the insulin shot. So I think that second shot just crashed him. And instead of the high blood sugar, which gives you the amnesia and the loss of memory and that kind of, you know, where am I kind of thing, I damn near put him into a diabetic coma. Well, I did, actually, is what happened. And TeePublic doesn't have it. I thought that's where I got it from. I might have gotten it somewhere else. Anyway, it's apparently Nito Shop. It's called Sapiens, apparently. This for those of you coming in late. Isn't that cool? Sapiens. Humanity. F yeah. It's out of stock. Well, they'll bring it back to stock. It's very popular. This is the same time I bought this, which I like. It's hard to see on TV because it's black and stuff, but I bought a T-shirt with this. It's one of my favorite things ever. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. That's the problem with the world today. Anyway, so I don't know what the story on Bean's growth is. He's at home now. He's fine. His blood sugar's back. He spent about a day not being his normal self, but now he's fine. I've got to get him in for the ultrasound, and then we'll see. And then I have to make that horrible equation. By the way, now this is California, but the bill for just that day, just having him in there and getting his blood sugar back up in the x-rays, that was in excess of $1,000. And so now I have to think about, well, first of all, it'd be nice if it weren't malignant. But if it is, then we have to see if it's operable. If it's operable, then I have to ask myself another question. I can't imagine that operation costing less than $4,000 or $5,000. Look, I would sell my car. I'm not kidding about this. Anybody who has pets knows this is not virtue signaling. If it turned out that they said to me, yes, he's got this condition, yes, we can operate on it, our chances of success are good, and if the operation's a success, we think we can get you at least another 2 years of quality life out of it, I'd find the money. But if it turns out they say, well, you know, we don't know if it's metastasized, and we can do the surgery, and here's the amount of surgery, and then you might get 3 weeks, or it's not about the money. It's not about the money. If they told me that I could do it, then I would be able to find the money. I would have no problem with that. But the question becomes: is all it is doing is prolonging him being in pain because I don't have the guts to face the music? You know, that's really what it came down to. We lost Pismo a couple of years ago as a cat I just adored. It's so important to me. Bean and Pismo were the 2 cats I had when I was living by myself, and I just wouldn't be here without those guys. And so I look back on the situation with Pismo, And I think I waited too long with Pismo. Um, I just, I mean, he was taking medication and was reducing some of these symptoms and stuff, and and it wasn't like I was afraid to do it. I was reluctant to do it, but I wasn't afraid to do it. I didn't I didn't wait too long because I was afraid to do it. I just, in retrospect, I think I waited too long. Um, so uh, if it's and when I say too long, I mean we're talking about a matter of days or a week or two at the most. So we'll see. But the same with Pismo. When Pismo got his diagnosis, they said he's probably got about 2 3 weeks left, and that's a hard blow. But at least you got the 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and so I'm just very very grateful and thankful to God and everything else that I got a chance to take him home. Bean now, he's home and he's happy. He doesn't show any signs of any trouble whatsoever. And so all of this is just a gift at this point. All of it's a gift, really, when you get right down to it. And thank you, Eric. Lady Hawk says it's the hardest car trip you'll ever take. I'll tell you something else too. Uh, my experience, not just with the, I've had to do this 1, 2, 3, 4 times, three. I can't come up with a number because my brain's bouncing off of it intentionally. 3 of my cats plus a dog, much earlier, but um, I had to do Natasha's cat, who she was closer to than any other 2 people I've ever met. I've had to, and then the person I was dating previously had a large number of cats, so I've had to make this trip 8 times, 9 times with animals I cared about quite a bit, some more than others, but still. Um, what I have found is that the trip to the vet is harder than the trip back from the vet, and that has been consistently true. Um, and we had a house call for Pismo, and that was hard. Anyway, um, I will give him a treat tonight for you, Gummins. You're a fine person for saying so. Thank you. That's very, very sweet of you. That's a very, very, very sweet thing to say. I will definitely do that. And for all of you with the kind words and everything else, I wouldn't have brought it up if somebody asked, and I did want to clear that up. So we'll see. Let's see here. We got plenty of time. Back to the questions. Okay, so here we are back again with Ian Nolan here. This one I'm going to read in full before I answer, and that's a reasonable request. This week, meaning last week, the New York Times admitted that the past decade the CIA had installed a dozen bases throughout Ukraine. Well, I did not know that. And we know that funding to Ukraine was unaudited and got laundered through SBF to be the second biggest source of funding to Democrats in 2022. What? What? I hadn't the slightest idea. I'd never heard that before. I know people talked about Ukraine corruption. I talked about all these other things, but I'd never heard that. Wow. I don't know what SBF is. It's something Biden Foundation. Somebody's going to tell me in a second. Well, that's a gobsmack. I'm gobsmacked knowing we had a basis in Ukraine. I've been telling my wife the whole time that we didn't. It's nice to know that the CIA makes a liar out of honest citizens. None of this justifies Putin invading Ukraine, but it does highlight that we've got a significant element of the uniparty that both loves its war machine and, in the name of supposed national security, will do things that make the world more unstable. How do we stand strong on the world stage without feeding this element? I believe this is where the core motivation of the Tucker Carlson, Ron Paul, Vivek Ramaswamy, myself, isolationist tendencies come from. Look, I'm 100% isolationist. I just feel like sometimes we just have to get out of the house and smack people before they get any funny ideas. That's my fundamental defense position. In fact, that's about as succinctly as I put it. I would like to be left alone. I like being left alone. I want to leave other people alone. But the idea that we can just kind of just close the doors and let the world go completely to hell, I think 9/11 showed us that that's not a feasible option. On the other hand, things like the adventure in the Philippines and all the rest of it, I think we had to fight in Korea, and I think we had to fight in Vietnam too. I think we had to fight in Afghanistan, and I think you can make a good case that we had to fight in Iraq only because we killed 80,000 Al Qaeda terrorists in Iraq. But whatever. I don't want to open up that can of worms. First of all, um, I am shocked and appalled, like I said, that I had been assuring everybody that there were no U.S. bases in Ukraine, and to find out that the CIA had opened a dozen of them or something um, embarrasses me and makes me out to be a liar, which I don't particularly like. But the thing that really genuinely shocks me is um, is this business about the aid to Ukraine being the second biggest source for funding for the Democrats. After I'm sure after public sector unions, another thing that I'm not particularly fond of. Um, what is SBF? Oh, Sam Bankman-Fried. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know who that is. I've heard the name, but I don't know what his relationship is. I mean, I've heard the name associated with the Bidens and all the rest of it. But we must be talking about tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Um, well, this is treason. What else do you call it? You want my real time reaction? Here's my real time reaction. I didn't know any of this. This is complete news to me. I don't have a prepared position on this. You're watching me watch it in real time. This is treason. This is treason. If it turns out that NATO has, if it turns out that the United States has put secret bases in Ukraine, it strengthens Putin's rationale for going into Ukraine. I don't think it justifies it, but it strengthens it. And oh, the guy who set up the Bitcoin guy, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. You're telling me that idiot, that curly-haired douchebag who doesn't look like he can tie his own shoes, is determining the course of world history now? You're telling me this is the guy who's playing with World War III? This moron? Well, the country's in the very best of hands. Not only can Donald Trump make this a 50 state winning argument, he will. He will. It does not justify the invasion of Ukraine. It doesn't justify it. But it certainly strengthens his case, and it certainly makes him seem more reasonable about it. I mean, he's been saying the whole time that NATO is encroaching on Russia, and I've been saying NATO is not encroaching on Russia. NATO is a voluntary organization. It's your constant, and I still believe this, by the way, this is the main point. This doesn't invalidate the point that the reason for NATO in the first place and the growth of NATO is Russian aggression, period. So this doesn't exonerate Putin. It doesn't make him innocent. But what it does do is makes the entire situation much, much less morally clear. And for that, we can thank our friend Joe. Well, what do you know about that? The big guy actually managed to do it. To be honest, if the CIA weren't currently so corrupt, I'd have fully understood the need for CIA offices everywhere. We need our spies everywhere if we can trust them. Now, Eric, there's a difference between a CIA office and a base. So which one is it? I'm not accusing you, Eric. I'm just saying, which is it? CIA offices, we ought to have, and I'm sure we do have CIA offices in every country in the world. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about that. A CIA office is a covert. That's entirely different than having. Of course, there's CIA offices in Ukraine. There's CIA offices everywhere. That's not the same thing. That's like saying, "Wow, there's a KGB facility in Los Angeles." What? Of course there is. The question is how much. What exactly are we talking about? Because if we're talking about anything that involves actual military hardware, now we have crossed a line. Steve Young says Ukraine has lost 3 Abrams tanks that we gave them, and Russia has a bounty on those tanks. Have Ukrainians collected any of those bounties? Listen, um, I was and remain in favor of of helping to fund Ukraine's defense only because of two reasons. Number one, aggression has to be stopped whenever it's faced. This is the lesson of Adolf Hitler in World War II. It doesn't matter which side you're on this one. That kind of aggression where you can just waltz into a country and try and knock it over. If you don't stop people like Putin in Ukraine, then you're going to have to try and stop them in Poland. If you don't stop them in Poland, you're going to have to try and stop them in Great Britain. This is a simple fact of history. So that's why I'm on that side of this thing. But despite the fact that I was and remain in favor of supporting the Ukrainians against this Russian aggression, I was always against sending two specific weapon systems to the Ukrainians. One of them was the M1 Abrams and the other was the F-16. And the reason I'm against sending those weapons to the Ukrainians is because they are so iconically American that it provides Putin with vision. I understand how these political arguments work. I understand the optics of storytelling. Don't send them anything that looks like our stuff. Don't send M1 Abrams. Nobody cares or knows about HIMARS, for example, right? But the M1 Abrams is so iconically American, and the F-16 is too. That if we send these things there, then Putin can show F-16s and M1 Abrams going up against Soviet equipment and go to his people and say, see, I told you we were fighting against America the whole time. This is how you lose wars, is by losing the battle of the hearts and minds. And I simply cannot believe, oh, they want Fat Amy now, do they? Well, they're not going to get it. They're not getting any F-35s. If it turns out, look, episode 7 of An Empire of Terror talks about I forget what the initials are. When tens of millions of Russians were starving in the early 1920s, right after the Russian Civil War, the United States of America, was the American Recovery Mission, ARA, American Recovery Administration, something. When Russians were starving, tens of millions of them were starving after the Civil War. I go into this in detail in episode 7. America, under the direction of Herbert Hoover, who was not president at the time, sent tons and tons and tons of food, plus hundreds of thousands of workers over there, tens of thousands of Americans, hundreds of thousands of Russians, to distribute food for free to the Russian people. That's what the evil capitalists did. Now stay with me on this, okay? And we knew that Lenin didn't like our government. Lenin wanted to prevent us from coming in there. He said this Hoover guy needs a slap in the face for even offering to feed our people when socialism is the answer. Okay, well, it turns out that those heartless bastards, those heartless American capitalist bastards, were willing to put up the money to feed these Russian communists for free because they were dying. And so we went over there and we helped them out. We saved hundreds, we saved tens of thousands. We saved 10 million Russian lives because of our largesse. But the reason we left was because we found out that Lenin was not only selling his grain, the grain that he could be using to feed his own people, he was selling on the international market to get hard cash to fund his Comintern so that he could overthrow governments like the United States. See how that works? We're sending them food out of our own pockets, and he's taking the money that he was using from his own wheat sales. Instead of feeding his starving people, he sells it on the international market to get money to overthrow the government of Britain, the United States, and all the rest of them. That was a slap in the face. But what caused us to actually leave was when we found out that Lenin was selling American food that was earmarked and delivered to Russia to feed his starving people. He was siphoning off some of that grain and selling our grain, which we'd shipped over there to feed his people, the American Relief Administration, thank you, the ARA. He was selling American paid for and delivered food on the international market in order to fund organizations to undermine the United States and other countries. And at that point, Herbert Hoover and the American people said, we'll see ya. And 100,000 Russian work agents who were volunteers on this, the Americans are pulling up their tents and going home, and both sides are crying. Our guys are crying because now people are going to continue to starve. Their guys are crying because these angels from across the ocean decided they'd had enough of this stuff, and rightfully so. So the reason I bring that up is because if it turns out that we did the same thing, or that Ukraine did the same thing, If it turns out that Ukraine took aid money and turned it into cash, then I think I'm probably done. Because you're in a fight for your life or not. Now, let me be clear on this because I don't want to have to back out of something that I'm not saying. There seems to be no question that they took aid money and turned it into cash for the Democrats. But if I'm Zelensky, my opinion is, okay, if I have to kick back 10% or 20% or 50% of the aid money I need to defend my country to this American president, then that's what I'm going to do because I have to save my country. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if it turned out that Zelensky took this money to personally enrich himself or any of the rest of it. I haven't seen any evidence of that. Then it's like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm tired of being a chump. I don't mind being an idealist, and I don't mind being mocked and laughed at. But comes a point when it's like, I'm not going to pay for this. So, in any event, sounds like pellets of cash for Iran. History repeats. Yeah, that's what Barack Obama did. Now, Ronald Reagan sent money to the Contras to fight the communists in Nicaragua, but my understanding is that the money that he sent there got there. Ronald Reagan didn't enrich himself off of money that was sent to the Contras. That's the difference. That's the difference. So we'll see. Zelensky knows about Biden enrichment. Sorry, I have no doubt that he does. Look, if I'm Zelensky and I say, and I need help, and the only place I can get it in any meaningful numbers and with any meaningful quality is the United States. Zelensky knew about Biden and Ukraine because Biden and Ukraine go back well before the invasion. In fact, the whole thing that Donald Trump was apparently impeached for the second time was because Donald Trump wanted to know, hey, what's all this business about Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, calling off this investigation into this gas company where his son works? He's got no business doing that. What's all this about? Lest we forget, Trump talked with Zelensky to get the info on Hunter Biden corruption, and Zelensky was ready to help. Yes, okay, so, look, I put myself in Zelensky's position here, and I'm thinking, I know the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States is corrupt, meaning the President is corrupt too. It's not like Barack Obama didn't know any of this stuff was going on. It's not like Barack Obama didn't know that Hillary was taking those emails home. Okay, so I'm Zelensky, and this is prior to the invasion. I've got a corrupt American president. Donald Trump is elected. Hooray. Now, Zelensky's not president until then. Oh, we've got a guy who seems like he's honest at last. Then along comes the election of 2020, which gobsmacks him as much as anybody else. Certainly was a key part. There's no way that Vladimir Putin was going to invade Ukraine if Trump was president, because Trump sat him down at dinner and said, Vlad, you decide to go into Ukraine, I'm going to hit Moscow. That's how you stop the invasion of Ukraine, is by saying, as the United States of frickin' America, if you go into Ukraine, we have an obligation to Ukraine because we talked them out of giving up their nuclear weapons that would have deterred you just fine. We talked them out of it. We gave them a security promise. If you go in there and force us to make our word good, then we're gonna smack you. So far, so good. But then along comes this election, which nobody that I know believes, who looked into it, believes was a free and fair election. Just the fact you had mail-in voting means it wasn't a free and fair election. Okay, so what happens now? Now, if I'm Zelensky and I become president of Ukraine, and I'm looking at this fact that there are Russian tanks in 10 miles down the road from my airport in the capital, I'm going to do what I have to do in order to save my country. So far, I'm still giving Zelensky the benefit of the doubt. If he's telling me, hey, look, you can get U.S. aid, but you got to kick 20% back to the big guy, I'll say, okay, then I'm going to need more aid than I need, because I'm not getting all the aid I say I'm getting, because that's how the deal works. This guy, good Lord, President Dementia. That's nicely played there, Dave Big Booty. The President Dementia. President Dementia of the United States. Well, I'll tell you something. I get the feeling that Biden's so unpopular and is going to. That's assuming he makes it to the election. Then I'm not going to go down that road again. But in any event, I think that it's entirely possible that Trump could, in 2024, in November of this year, Trump could be looking at the kind of numbers that you cannot cheat. I mean, you can and you can try, but now I think we're talking about the kind of things where we're going to start seeing reports on election night where precincts are reporting 200% of their total population, of eligible voters voting for Joe Biden, that kind of thing. It's going to be. I think the way it's evolving now is that Trump's going to win so many of the legitimate votes that in order to cheat their way out of it, it is going to defy the ability to cover it up. You know what I mean? For two reasons. I think the margin's going to be much greater this time. And secondly, because we're going to be on the ball, we're not going to be buying this and, hey, we're closing for the night. We'll see you guys at 9 o'clock in the morning. Oh, okay, sure thing, no problem. We'll see you then. Okay, good, great, fantastic. Too big to rig. Nicely put there, Coffee Shinato. It's, God, you guys, I got the smartest audience in the internet, man. Too big to rig. Somebody needs to get that to Donald Trump. You know, somebody needs to get that to Donald Trump. It's like, this election, we're going to win. The victory we're going to have is going to be too big to rig. No, I'll send it to Donald Trump. And I'll say, it's not from me. It's from a scholar named Coffee Shinato. Anyway, well, that's a gobsmack that I needed. Uh, okay. All right. Thank you very much for that, Ian. I appreciate it. So I don't know if you got any answers, but you got my real-time reaction to it. Roadrunner, greetings, friend William. Greetings and salutations to you as well, Roadrunner. Many of your Stratos fans do not have FB accounts. Do you think it might be possible to set up a group email address that as Strato fans could sign up for so we can find out if there's going to be a show or not? Usually someone with Facebook access will log on and spread the word, but not always, and you have a bunch of people logged into Twitch chatting back and forth wondering if there will be a show. Thanks in advance. We have a mailing list that that covers all of the shows that we put out, including things like Right Angles and that sort of thing. And you don't have to be a BillWhittle.com member to be on the mailing list. I'm wondering if there's a I don't know if an email list would be the thing for this. To be honest with you, the way these things work, Roadrunner, is that the shows are on Monday and Thursday unless something comes up, and if it comes up, it comes up at the last minute. And so Facebook is really the most rapid reaction time thing I have there. I don't think you have to have a Facebook account, by the way. I may be wrong about this. I suppose I must be if you're telling me that they don't have a Facebook account, but I don't think you have to have an account to go to that page. You certainly would have to have an account if you want to make a comment or something, but isn't that right? You can still go to the page. Is that correct? On the mailing list, it would only be for Strata shows. Well, let's see. Dave says we also need to coordinate our events for the Strata Eclipse. Yes, we'll take care of that too. We all know, this is why I'm saying incrementally, we're going to be in the Fort Worth area for the eclipse, and I don't have any more information on that right now, and I can't put together any more right now because I've got to get this bloody thing out. I keep saying the bloody thing. It's a marvelous thing, this script. I just got to get it out the door. Let me just have a look here. I think anybody should be able to get to this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put the link to the Facebook page in the comment section at Twitch, and you can click on it and tell me if you can get there. Come on, baby. Let me just back this thing out because Facebook.com/Bill Whittle, no spaces. So here it comes. I mean, that's obviously pretty easy to type in, but I'll copy it anyway. And I'll put it in our Twitch timeline. I do it at YouTube as well, but I have to go into the browser and do all kinds of other things that I have to do here. Hang on a second. Here's the link. And so, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, with the question, Roadrunner, it doesn't seem like anything I'm going to be doing in the near future. Sending out an email blast is not an impossible amount of work, but it's a. I mean, when I set out the email for right angles and things, it's a 20-minute job at least. So hopefully we can just stay with the Facebook thing on this, at least for the time being. If not, I'll think about maybe putting up a temporary post on the BillWhittle.com website. Maybe that's the answer. No show today kind of thing, you know. Otherwise, I would assume it's going to be on Monday, the Stratosphere Studio at 6, and on Thursday's Stratosphere Lounge at 6 Eastern. Sorry, Pacific. Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. On forms of totalitarianism, the main distinction I can find between German Nazism, Russian communism, and American progressivism appears to be their application to human sexuality. We'll find out about that. My first reaction would be that that the first two have guns and the third one doesn't, which makes me very happy. The Nazis had no societal tolerance for tolerance. There's another cute word I ought to incorporate. I have no tolerance for this. I have no totalitarian tolerance for this. For homosexuality, neither did the Russians, to the best of my knowledge. Not only to the best of your knowledge, it's a hard thing for Natasha, not just because she wasn't here during the whole, hey, you know, here's your new normal. There's nothing like this in Russia at all. I reckon they were just too interested in producing soldiers for war against the imperialist West to allow such behavior. Yes, and they had a much less feminized society than we do, and that sort of thing. And well, overly masculinized is a much better way of putting it. I think Nazis were the most overly masculinized society in the history of the modern world, and that's not good. On the other hand, American progressives are the most overly feminized society in the history of the modern world, and that's not so good either. In the American communist reboot, just like every other modern reboot of the classics, it appears to be functionally the same as the Russians and the Germans, except for that in the immortal words of South Park, they put a chick in it, made it lame and gay. What do you think drives this changes? Well, now we're on to something actually pretty interesting, and that's why I love doing this show. Here's why they do it, Jacob. They do it because they don't have the guns. And they don't have the guns because we have the guns. And we have the guns because of the Second Amendment. So if the argument is what's the difference between why are American progressives doing things differently than the Nazis, the National Socialists of Germany, or the class-based socialists of Russia? What's different? Well, the difference is that the Nazis could use guns against their people, the communists could use guns against their people, and the progressives can't use guns against their people because the people have the guns. And so they've learned, and it's also there's a selection thing at work here too. If you are a Nazi or a communist, and I'm talking about, you know, the low level, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Goons. If you like beating people up and telling them what to do, then being a Nazi is a pretty good deal. You get to wear a uniform, a brown shirt in the early days and a black shirt later on. And if you like beating people up, then being a member of the Cheka is a pretty good deal. Or you could be an apartment snitch and just have the power of life and death over all of your neighbors, and you'll be the one person that they all are nice to because they know that you got a phone call line to the KGB, and if they make the phone call, then your family's going to disappear. So if you like beating people up, those are the places to be. Now, if you like telling people what to do, in the third case, and it turns out that you go and tell those people what to do and they end up shooting you, Then you select out the goons, and what you get in place of the goons um, are the I almost said tricksters, the smooth talkers. You get the you get the people who have the high level of what Evan Sayre called rhetorical intelligence. They don't have the physical courage necessary, because if they come after us physically with physical violence and force, they're going to find themselves shot. So not only do the people that become jackbooted thugs disappear out of that, the thugdom is still there. It's just they don't have the courage to face the weaponry. So they have to think of some other way. So basically, when you think about all these things that you mentioned, all of this, the transsexual movement, the raising the rainbow flag above the American flag, all of this, this is aggression. This is aggression on the part of people that know that they cannot use physical force. So they use psychological force. And they're masters at this. They've had to become masters at this because they haven't had any other options. So the best way to think about all of this cultural stuff, that just as one example, just the desecration of the Boy Scout movement, you know, something that was as pure and as clean as the Boy Scout movement. It's not even about allowing. You see, it's really much deeper and much more powerful than this. Um, when the issue about whether or not there should be gay scoutmasters in the Boy Scouts came up, that was the end of the Boy Scouts. Not because of gay scoutmasters. It's entirely possible, not possible, it's certain, that there were large numbers of gay scoutmasters in the Boy Scouts prior to this thing becoming open. They just weren't. They were just perfectly fine being quiet about it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not saying it was a haven for homosexuality. I'm just saying, if you look at the history of the Boy Scouts and the total number of people that have been scoutmasters, and clearly some significant percentage of those must have been gay. And it didn't matter because they weren't making moves on the kids. They weren't doing anything. They were just, they were there. So when the issue became about whether or not the Boy Scouts could have homosexual scoutmasters, it was the end of the Boy Scouts, not because it meant there might be gay scoutmasters, because they had been there before, but because all of a sudden now the Boy Scouts are dealing with the question of sexuality, period. You could make the case that if the argument was that scoutmasters should be allowed to bring their girlfriends with them on scouting events, and and have a private tent where they could go at it once the campfire was poured out, you'd have the same problem. You're introducing sexuality to the Boy Scouts, and that's the end of the Boy Scouts, because the Boy Scouts are not about sexuality. And once it becomes about sexuality, then all of the things that make the Boy Scouts work becomes, I think, irrevocably tarnished, right? You put your arm around a kid, hey, good job, son. That's all right. You did your good job. You tried to tie the knot, but you didn't get it right, but that's okay. You tried hard. Okay, that's great. That's no problem. That's what the Boy Scouts all about. But now, if you're talking about, well, is this a sexual move? Now it's over. It's over. Now it's over. Now nothing is clean. Nothing is sacred. Everything is a potential for being the lowest of the low. And now it's like you get to this world where I don't want to be seen as this or that or whatever. See, it's like Roadrunner says now Boy Scouts have to let girls in. Well, that's because the progressives, the socialists in our society, kicked in the door of the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts is antithetical to their philosophy, and under the communist system or under the Nazi system, they would have just kicked in the door. But they can't. So they kick in the door morally and emotionally and religiously and all the rest of it. They just destroy things from within. And the reason that we don't fight them is because they have used our own decency against us. That's why we tolerate it. And it's time to stop tolerating it. It's just time to stop tolerating it. I keep coming back to, I don't think there's been an episode. You guys want to set up a new drinking bingo card? Let's just use body cam footage, police body cam footage, and that's the one guaranteed to get you smashed on in a given episode of these shows. But one of the things that I see during these police arrests are 9 out of 10 times the police will continue to argue with these people in a very polite way. Ma'am, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to get out of the car. I'm not getting out of the car. Ma'am, I really don't want to have to pull you out of the car. Well, I'm not getting out of the car, so F you, you effing pigs. Well, ma'am, listen, we really don't want to have to put you. He goes on and on and on and on and on. The police are actually being too nice. They're allowing this person to control the situation. Every now and then, you will see a situation where you'll see a policeman who will just won't play that game. Ma'am, I need you to step out of the car. I don't feel safe stepping out of the car. Ma'am, this is a lawful order. I'm asking you to step out of the car. Well, I'm not stepping out of the car. Ma'am, I'm going to say this one more time. If you do not step out of the car, I'm going to pull you out of the car. Well, I'm not leaving the... And she's gone. She's out. Okay? That's how it's supposed to be done. And the same thing goes for all these assaults on these cultural institutions. We want girls to be in the Boy Scouts. Well, they can't be in the Boy Scouts because it's the Boy Scouts. That's the definition of Boy Scouts. You can't have girls in the Boy Scouts. Well, that's not fair to girls. Well, then too bad. Then too bad. Congratulations. This is a lesson for girls. You live in an unfair world. Girls cannot be part of the Boy Scouts. Any other questions for you? No? Okay, we're moving on. That's how it needs to be handled. We can't be having these discussions when we get bogged down into a discussion of why. Well, why can't girls be in the Boy Scouts? We lose. Any question other than done? No. Done. But that's how they win these things. They drag us into these arguments, which they are masters of rhetoric of, and the next thing you know, you find yourself agreeing with them because they're the kind of people that convince you that. I heard this during the Rodney King argument, where a really good lawyer can convince you that an elephant can hang off a cliff with his tail tied to a daisy, because they set up these chains of things and you don't see where the logical break is until you stand way back. But they don't want you to stand back because things are clear from a distance. They want to pull you in so the minutia is so dense, the granularity of it is so high that you don't even know where you are anymore. You just step way back. Why is it that the girls can't? Why can't you have a girl in a Boy Scout? Because they're a girl. Well, it's not fair to girls. Well, it is fair to girls. It's not fair to boys to have girls in the Boy Scouts. So you've got half of the country that thinks it's unfair if you're not in. You don't have half of the country. By the way, there's just a few of you lunatics who have this idea. Most girls don't want to be in the Boy Scouts. In fact, I can't imagine a single girl who wants to be in the Boy Scouts who's not somebody paid for by you or one of your kids, who's doing it only for the sake of for the argument. And the second that you let girls into the Boy Scouts, that kid has nothing to do with it. So no, the answer is no. If you want to say that that's unfair to half of the population of all the girls, well, that's fine. Because if we do let them in, it's unfair to the other half of the population. Go kiss my butt, pound sand, get out of here, you lose. Done. Not wasting any more time talking to you. Honestly, there was some British parliamentarian who said, I think it was a British parliamentarian, it might have been an American. Actually, it might have been a Supreme Court case. I don't remember who said it, but somebody once said, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And somebody said, look, gentlemen, all of us know the difference between a live horse and a dead one. So pray, let us cease flogging the latter. Right? I don't have to give you the definition of something that we know. Jordan Peterson, this is Bart's Treasure saying, Jordan Peterson said that, he's paraphrasing, we have successful social contracts that have been so successful for so long that when leftists challenge them, conservatives are unprepared to defend them. Yeah, that's a great point. What do you mean you can have Boy Scouts with girls in it? That's ridiculous. Are we prepared to make that argument? No. So we sit back and we let them make their argument. We just kind of walk ourselves along down the path. They've got everything now down to the resolution of atoms, where they're trying to tell you, is there a difference between this atom and that atom? No, I can't see any. Well, see, there you go. Yes, but if I step back and take a look, I can clearly see that this is lead and that this is gold, and there is a difference between these two things. So piss off. Piss off. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's what that is, though. Any of these social assaults that you see on any kind of attack on our, this is what critical theory is all based on. Critical theory is the weapon. It's a psychological weapon used by people who would normally use guns but can't use guns because we have the guns because we had founding fathers who understood how power works. That's why they hate the Second Amendment. That's why they insist on gun control. That's why they go rabid, foaming at the mouth when they hear or see the picture of an AR-15, because an AR-15 is individual freedom, period. That's why I used to own one before the tragic boating accident. Eric Blake. And by the way, do you know what I did there with this ongoing joke I'm doing here? Do you understand what I'm doing with the tragic boating accident? I'm playing their game and I'm beating them at their game. You see how that works? They're masters of rhetoric. They have rhetorical intelligence. So why is it that I don't have an AR-15 anymore? Well, I don't have an AR-15 anymore because of the tragic boating accident. Yes, I was taking all of my guns from one place to another that I used to own. And I was taking them by boat because it was convenient and also because it was on the way to where I was going. And there was a tragic boating accident and all of my weapons went overboard. They're out in the middle of the ocean. Where? The Pacific Ocean. You're welcome to go look for them. If you can find them, I'd love to have them back. But when I say I lost all of my weapons in a tragic boating accident, I did. And the reason I did that is because if the state of California decides to ever come looking for the weapons that I once owned, they were lost in a tragic boating accident. And I've been talking about this forever. Of course they were lost in a tragic boating accident. I'm a law-abiding citizen. If you tell me that these weapons are against the law, I would say, well, geez, I'm against that ideologically, but fortunately, I don't have to worry about that because I don't have the weapons anymore because I lost them in a boating accident. Now what are you going to do, Scooter? So, moving on. I love calling people Scooter. That's just direct from Ron White. It's just, to me, it's just the greatest sneer of an. Calling somebody Scooter is an insult for somebody who's so little that they're not even worth your time to think of a good insert on it. What are you going to do about it, Scooter? Eric Blake. So, Bill, as a California voter, have you been following this year's Senate campaign for the seat of Dianne Feinstein? I have not. I don't care. I already know the outcome. On the off chance you haven't, on the off chance that I have, recent voting brawl has led to two candidates remaining, one Democrat, our friend Adam Schiff, and a Republican who shocked all, including the New York Times, by coming in very close for a promising final round to come. I did not know that. My education continues apace. I have not paid any attention to the primaries. By the way, let me just stop right here. The fact that that California is set up in such a way that the final election is a result between the number one and number two total vote getter. So usually the election for senator in November is between one Democrat and another Democrat. The fact that a Republican came in second, even if it was a distant second, means that things are changing here rapidly, that people have had enough of this bull crap. And the fact that it was close is incredible. Continue. And not just any run-of-the-mill Californian Republican that nobody knows or cares about, but baseball star Steve Garvey of the Dodgers. Now, younger folks may scratch their heads and ask who, but I'd wager Sports Illustrated from back in the day with Garvey on the cover answers that question nicely. Steve Garvey, I'm ashamed to say that I did not know this. It's my job to be aware of these things. I've been deep in this other project, so this is wonderful news. If Steve Garvey came in a close second, then I think that we have an excellent chance of getting him into the Senate, because he is a sports hero. And one thing that Californians worship are, well, two things that Californians worship are celebrity and good looks. And that's all you need to know about progressives, right? That's it. That's really it. Is the person good looking? And would they be the kind of person you'd want to have at one of your parties and not embarrass your friends from France? And Garvey is a good-looking celebrity, so he's gonna, especially compared to Schiff. I suspect he's gonna win that election, Eric. I think he's gonna win it. I think he's gonna win it big. I think he's gonna win it big. Here's the Sports Illustrated cover from April 12th, 1982. Now, he's obviously a strikingly handsome guy there. I'm sure he's not quite as handsome as he once was. Let's find out. But when you have that kind of look, you don't really shake it, you know? Steve Garvey looks like $1,000,000 frickin' bucks, man. His improbable rise, the New York Times says. Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey. Oh, Lord. Steve Garvey's going to eat him alive. Adam Schiff is one of the most unpopular, unpleasant individuals ever. Put aside his politics. We're just, see, it all comes back to the same thing. It all comes back to the same thing. It's all about the story. I wish it weren't. I really, really, really wish it weren't, but it is. It's about the story. Steve Garvey's going to win the election, and he's going to be the next senator from California because he's better looking than Adam Schiff is. Period. Period. He's a star. He's got star quality, and Adam Schiff is just one of the most. He's going to win in a landslide. This is California politics. Why do you think that Gavin Newsom is being nominated, or is at least being held as the whole card for the presidency? Why do you think it's Gavin Newsom? Gavin Newsom's record is harder to defend than any other Democrat in the country. Why do you think Gavin Newsom is the person that they're holding on to? Because he's a good-looking guy, and he's a smooth talker. And I wish they were wrong about this, but they're right. Roadrunner brings up a great point. Nixon and Kennedy, absolutely. As it's famously well known, during the first televised debates with Nixon and Kennedy, two things happened. Three things. First of all, Nixon refused to wear makeup on television. And Nixon had to shave twice a day because he had this pronounced 5 o'clock shadow, so he looks worse on television. Secondly, Nixon was sweating on camera, and Kennedy wasn't. And third, people who listened to the debates, listened to them on the radio, thought Nixon won in a landslide as far as the debates, but people who watched it on television said, no, it's Kennedy. Kennedy won because he was better looking. It's hard to imagine Richard Nixon being idealistic enough to make that moon landing, we choose to go to the moon speech. Anybody can write a speech for anybody. It's just hard to imagine Richard Nixon having that. And while I think Nixon was an extremely effective president in terms of foreign policy, Nixon got us off the gold standard, and I don't think he was the kind of. My dad was a big Nixon defender. You either were or you weren't once Watergate happened. And so I'm on Nixon's side on Watergate only because I think it was a coup. But he helped make it a coup. And I don't, I'm not a fan. I do have one president since World War II that I admire greatly. I just wish I'd been smart enough to admire him while he was still alive. But I wasn't. So that's my burden, among others. Bob Knife. We got a Road Rider, sorry. We got Steve Young, Chris Taylor, Ray Juarez. We're not going to get through these. I'll do my best. I'll try and shorten them out. Let me just see if I've gotten any messages from my Spetsnaz handler. All right, moving on. Bob Knife. And if I got that wrong, Bob, please correct me. If I got it wrong, please just do it phonetically, and I'll try and get it right from that point forward. Saw Ben Shapiro's interview with you for Empire of Terror. It was great. You were controlled and energized. I hope that people watch it. I listened to the Cold War 5 or 6 times, so I'm very excited about Empire of Terror. Thank you very much, Bob. Have you thought of doing another What We Saw episode about the early space race? Well, you covered some of this in the Cold War, and while Hollywood popularized it in the right stuff, I'd love to hear your in-depth take on it. Since the average subscriber age over Daily Wire is likely 35, perhaps you could do a series on moon landing deniers. Just a thought. I was a history major, so I appreciate how you bring history to life. Thanks again. Thank you, Bob. When you get your membership, free trial membership at your free membership, limited time membership at, not a trial, at Daily Wire, Apollo 11, What We Saw, is 30% about Apollo 11, and all the rest of that series is about the space race from a bottle rocket, from a Chinese bottle rocket through Goddard all the way through Werner von Braun, through the 50s with the International Geophysical Year and sounding rockets, and then all of the launch attempts that were done on everything. So I don't know if you've seen the Apollo 11 series, but it is essentially the space race what we saw. In fact, there's no question that's what it is. That's what it really should have been called, the space race what we saw. But they did it on the anniversary of Apollo 11, which obviously was the highlight of the space race. But the Apollo 11 series is mostly about things other than Apollo 11. For example, I want to say episode 2 is just about, essentially just about the Gemini program and the idea of I'm pretty sure that episode starts with the the 1UP mission where what's the word? What's that mission called? I've forgotten. It slipped my mind. But the idea where the mission would be that you would have one ship that would take off, fly to the moon, land on the moon, come back, all of it in one piece. It wouldn't be a lunar module, wouldn't be a two-stage module. It required the Nova rocket that we didn't have. So I actually got into that in a lot of detail. And I don't know if it slipped your mind, but if it turns out that it hasn't, then you're in for a real treat, because I think Apollo 11 series is the best work I've ever done, and I'm so proud of it. I think it's my favorite work because of my delivery. You have to have a certain amount of gravitas to deliver the Cold War. You have to have a certain amount of just sheer on-screen revulsion to do Empire of Terror. But I just had fun doing Apollo. I had fun on camera doing it. I wrote it in a fun way. The style of Apollo 11, what we saw, versus Empire of Terror or even Cold War, is so fundamentally different. It's just much more playful. And in fact, not only did I take the history of the space program back to von Braun and Goddard, I took it back to cap guns. I made the case that in the 60s we had to make toys that worked, and that in order to have a cap gun, the cap guns were made by guys who weren't smart enough to work for NASA. Things like Johnny Astro and stuff are using, advanced aerodynamics, and they had to work in the real world. So hopefully that'll be something for you to see if you haven't seen already. I was having fun. P7 2017 says you're having fun during the virtual presidency thing too. I did. I had a lot of fun during that. Okay, here we go. Road Rider. It's Rider. I won't make that mistake again. Thank you for the big button to remind me. First time. Seemed to work last time. Mike Rowe has been my favorite commentator since Paul Harvey. Mike and I had a long conversation about Paul Harvey off camera. You're a close second. Thank you. Kidding. I don't pay Mike a monthly basis, but I have contributed to Mike Rowe's Works Foundations. You, on the other hand, have been paying monthly since PJTV days. Thank you very much for that, Road Rider, for both of those. Question. Do you get nervous on being on a podcast like Mike's, Butterflies and such? So much rides on a great performance on a podcast like that with regards to this future success of all your projects. You came across as unlikable. That actually hurts your if you came across unlikable, that actually hurts your prospects. Do you have an inner dialogue when you're calculating what to say and how to say it? Or are you just winging it with that enormous talent of yours? Well, aren't you kind? No, I don't get the butterflies over anything, and I get the least butterflies of anything I do when I work with Mike. This is the third podcast that I did with Mike Rowe. Mike and I have we have a connection with each other because we both do the same thing and we do it the same way. We talked about that quite a bit on this last one that we did, that several times during the last interview on the show we just did a couple days ago, that was released a couple days ago. I would say things like, look, Mike, you and I have a similar line of work. You and I are in the same profession. And we talk about our rhetorical tool bag. And so Mike and I have the same occupation. We have the same dirty job as the other one does. And because of that, we both have the same tool set. And the thing that I like about Mike is that Mike is willing to talk about the tool set. Some people don't want to talk about the tool set. Um, just since the name was mentioned earlier, this is not in any way to isolate him or select him out. But for instance, Mark Levin never really talks about how Mark Levin is Mark Levin. Mark Levin just goes out and is Mark Levin. But he has the same kind of tool set that we all do. Mark Levin writes his material before he delivers it. I do, and so does Mike Rowe. But the difference between the two of us is Mike and I are willing to show you a little bit behind the curtain because that's our shtick. That's how we have fun with it. It would lessen the impact of somebody like Mark Levin to reveal what his to reveal. Steve Young says in the Steve Young in the comments says Mark starts and then he gets angry. Yes, and I'm not taking anything away from that because he is genuinely angry, but he's angry in a controlled Mark Levin teleprompter way. Please do not misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's not angry about these things. I'm saying he's not ranting and raving about these things because he has Mark Levin being angry is part of Mark Levin's rhetorical tool bag. That doesn't mean he's not telling the truth, and it doesn't mean he's not genuinely angry. It just means that he knows what he's good at. He's not acting angry, but he is performing angry. Because if he were to lose his temper angry, I can be angry when I need to be angry on camera, but that's not what I sound like when I'm angry in private. When I'm angry in private, it's unprintable. And I would imagine it'd probably be the same for him as well. So we all have this, but the nice thing about the Mike show is, see, the great thing about Mike is that Mike has a sense of humor about himself. And when you're dealing with somebody who has a sense of humor about himself, and you have a sense of humor about yourself, then that opens the whole thing up for all of this towel snapping kind of stuff that we do. He started off by saying, I've got a piece of paper that I use to write down things that are really important, and I probably won't remember to use it. And I say, well, no worries there, Mike. You're not going to get much use out of pen on this interview. There was a moment there in that interview where Mike said, Mike is joking with me about saying, well, I really liked it, and I'm a pretty big deal. That's funny. That's self-deprecating humor. And wit is when I would say, well, you wouldn't know it from the set. That's a rib, and it's funny. And he laughed and I laughed, and so he can insult me and I can laugh at the insult. I can insult him and he can laugh at the insult. I got Mike with my favorite line, which I've used many times. I used to use in the dating scene before I met my beautiful wife, where I would sit down and, at the end of something and just say, hey, listen, just in all seriousness, I just wanted to tell you that just sitting here and, and having an hour to talk to somebody this famous, this well-known, this well-loved and deep and, as highly respected, and I just wanted to say it's got to be a real thrill for you. And I don't want you to feel like you have to do anything special to thank me for it. That moment where you're giving somebody that plate full of compliments that they've had that dinner 1,000 times. Oh, you're the most amazing guy. You're the prettiest girl. Whatever. You just take it and give it to them. At the last second, just take it away. And you eat it yourself. That makes them happy. That relaxes them because it's like, I've heard this so many times. Gee, Mike, a really big fan, and all the rest of this stuff. That's what I was saying. It's like, geez, what an incredible experience this has to be for you. And then they know that they can play with you, and then they know that you're not taking yourself too seriously. They're not taking them too seriously. It's just easy. So I really enjoy doing it with Mike because he needs all the help he can get. That's the thing about the Mike Rowe Show. He's not self-conscious about the fact that he's not terribly interesting, and that you can go on the show and basically bail out his show, and he'll thank you for it at the end. He'll say, gee, thanks, Bill. This was a great show. Well, anytime you want a good show, Mike, you just have me back. And if you want to have an okay show, just mention me by name. See how it works? It's great. And that is the sign of self-confidence. I had that same relationship with somebody I know much less well, and that's Glenn Beck. When I introduced him, I did a great introduction to him. He came out for a FOA event, and I had a great, funny 6-7 minute introduction for Glenn Beck, and then he teased me for the rest of his speech, and I teased him back, and it was great. It was really fun, really fun. So I don't ever get nervous. I was very happy with the Ben Shapiro interview, but Ben is just not like Mike. I mean, I'm getting ready to go on the air with Mike. I mean, before we go on the air with Mike, we're just laughing our tails off and just joking about all kinds of things. And then with Ben, the Skype call comes in, and Ben is just looking at his notes, man. He's just getting ready for the next segment. There's none of this play, nothing, just boom. But I don't get nervous with Ben. I know what I'm doing, and Ben is Ben, and everybody's different, and that's why this thing works. You think about our bench. If you think about the people who are on our side of the argument as a bench, it's a hell of a bench, and everybody's different. Everybody's got their own angle. Clayton, he's not really even on the bench so much as he's there to get the water for the rest of us guys. But Ben is a razor. He's a razor, and razors have their use. They're excellent. He's a scalpel is a better term. He's a scalpel, and that's great. And then there are other times when you need a little more folksiness but I don't know who is. I don't see anybody on the left. You got Senk, and you used to have Jon Stewart and what's the name of that lunatic? I know that narrows it down. Oh, come on. I don't even remember his name anymore. It doesn't matter. He's not been a factor for a while. It doesn't matter. I can see his face. So you get the idea, right? It's we've got a tremendous bench. We got a tremendous bench because we got things to be proud of. We got truth on our side. No, not Bill Maher. Olbermann is who I was thinking of. Who's sitting in Central Park feeding the pigeons and mumbling out loud now. Yeah, Keith Doberman. Yippee. I think I made it to the worst person in the world second. One episode, I was the second worst person in the world, I think, once. So I remember it was like, if I cared more about you, I would have been more offended. I love those little things. I just love it. Yes, Steve, that's a perfect word for him. I'm not going to repeat it, but boy, oh boy, that's about as good as it gets. P7 2017 says Olbermann is kind of pole vaulted into the deep end. Sir, that is a remarkably well put together compliment. That's a work of art. Pole vaulted into the deep end. Yeah. And Rachel Maddow. That's it. What have they got? Joy Behar. These are their deep thinkers. Rachel Maddow. That's their bench. We got Thomas Sowell, man. Mark Levin, and we got a lot of firepower on our bench. And it's my pleasure to be the pleasure and an honor to be the foremost of those many weapons, if not in reach, then at least in terms of lethality. Back we go, back into the dark depths of the members forum. We got a Steve Young, a Chris Taylor, we got a Ray Juarez, we got a CP Tomes. We might get through this if I keep them brief. Steve Young. Good evening, Bill. Good evening, Steve. New York State is posting National Guard soldiers with assault rifles, those assault rifles, in the New York City subway stations to check passengers' bags Isn't it the job of the TSA to screen passengers and approve them to board our transportation system? Soldiers are trained and equipped to identify and destroy enemies, not keep the peace. Yes. So this sounds to me like there's no other possible explanation than some political motive, right? What the hell is the National Guard doing that? That's absurd. So when you see something that's absurd, you have to ask yourself using uh, Whittle's first law, and the first law being that if the optics of something are so bad, then the only explanation is that the optics for the alternative of what they're really doing is worse. Um, so what that's telling me is that if you use the TSA, you're basically saying that the federal security agency responsible for the safety of citizens traveling in the country has declared that the United States that the New York subway system is unsafe. If the TSA is doing it, then you're admitting that the federal agency responsible for the safety of people traveling in this country has decreed that the New York City subway is a site of a possible terrorist attack. However, the National Guard can be called out at the whim of the Democratic governor. And if the Democratic governor decides that he's going to call the National Guard out, then it's no longer a TSA issue, right? I think if I had to guess, that's what I would say the explanation is. You don't want to admit that the TSA says that the subway is unsafe. If you have to put National Guards together, well, I'm the governor, I put National Guards guy wherever I want to. I do remember in the days after 9/11, when air travel started again, I had to fly I think I had to fly to a speaking event somewhere. It could have been a speaking event. I had to fly somewhere within about 4 or 5 days of restarting travel after 9/11. And I remember going through LAX and seeing guys there with M4s and thinking, well, this seems like a different country because other countries have armed guys with rifles at every gate. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I guess we're not dicking around anymore. So hopefully that helped there, Steve. Chris Taylor. Bill, just to follow up on your Nation of Immigrants versus Pioneer answer from last week. Just struck me as odd that you seem to personally feel that we are a nation of immigrants, and specifically reference being descended from immigrants with your story of your grandfather immigrating to the U.S. It seemed odd for someone whose own mother, if I remember correctly, was one of the pioneers who built the technological marvel that is the city in the sky with a continuously changing population of about 500,000 people at any time. Oh, you're talking about air travel. Do you not think of her as a pioneer who helped settle the sky? Few pioneers are Kit Carlson or Charles Lindbergh. Also, what percent of the persons you profiled in Forgotten Heroes would you classify as pioneers versus how would you classify them as immigrants? Like your mother, of course, some could be both. To put it in perspective, the population of the stratosphere today is to a rough order of magnitude the same as the population of the ground prior to the invention of agriculture. Well, all that's interesting. So basically, to take the last one first, there are more people who fly through the stratosphere on a given day than were on planet Earth prior to the invention of agriculture. So tens, if not a few 100,000 humans in the stratosphere on any given day. So that's interesting. That's an interesting comparison. Working the questions backwards, what percentage of persons in Forgotten Heroes would I classify as pioneers? Well, John Paul Jones was an immigrant, and I suppose you could say he was a pioneer. But if you say that John Paul Jones as a naval guy was a pioneer, or my mom is a pioneer because of her, because of the fact that she was pioneering in the civil aviation case, you're kind of broadening out the definition of pioneer. I mean, when you say a nation of pioneers, needless to say, I went straight to people settling the frontier. But if you're making a case that it's a nation of pioneers in terms of people who are pushing the boundaries of things, then the number of people who are pioneers in the society is, I think, much smaller than those that were traditional farmer pioneers. I mean, since we seem to be getting into a definitional dispute here, or discussion is a better word, you could be a capital P pioneer by being a farmer. You just were a farmer out in Indian country someplace. You weren't pushing any boundaries as a pioneer. You were a pioneer because you were on the frontier. And that's what I thought you meant by a nation of pioneers. If you want to say pioneers in terms of people who are pushing the envelope, there's actually much fewer Americans that do that than there were as pioneer farmers. I don't really see much to this argument that is of real importance. You know, I certainly hope it didn't hurt your feelings or anything. I just, to say that we're a nation of pioneers is true, but to say that we're not a nation of immigrants is not true. And it's not an either or issue. You're not either a pioneer or an immigrant, as you point out in your own entry here. My mom was both, could be both. She was a pioneer and she was an immigrant. But I would never have thought of my mom as a pioneer prior to you bringing it up. I would have thought of the Boeing brothers as pioneers, sorry, the Lockheed brothers, or Boeing, or any of those guys. Those people are pioneers. My mom was an employee in a pioneering industry, but I'd never considered her a pioneer prior to this very moment here. It's a flattering thing to say, and it's true, but I never really thought of it that way. And so I think that the problem is that immigration has become so, that American immigrants have become so different from what immigrants used to be, that there is a certainly justifiable pushback against what we're seeing as immigrants, because so many of these people are either illegal, don't want to be here, whatever the case may be. But I don't think that negates the fact that we are a nation of immigrants. Immigrants were a different kind of people back then. And for those of you watching on Media Matters, I'm not talking about their skin color, I'm talking about their attitude. Prior to the last 25, 30 years, especially the last 3 years, immigrants were people that came to this country because they wanted to be Americans, not because they wanted to be in America. That's a profound little turn of phrase, isn't it? Sometimes I surprise myself. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Immigrants used to want to be Americans. Now they just want to be in America. Wow, Bill. It's a prolific night. I have to get out my special pen. That's rather good. That's really rather good, if I do say so myself. Okay, let's see if we can get through these things here. We got 2 from Ray Juarez. I'll take the second attempt. Hello, Hair Whittle. Hello, Senor Juarez. Or Hair Juarez, whichever you prefer. It's the hair of the Ray that met me. My post this week is a suggestion rather than a question. I believe that YouTube has changed its algorithm to favor tags over titles. I would suggest filling out the tags for each video if you haven't been. Now, we used to do the tags, and then they stopped doing tags. You used to be able to go into the tag section and just type in, you know, Republican, president, you know, all these other things, and that's just not there anymore. If you haven't been, be as liberal with the tags as you can. Anything that you talk about the episode should go as a tag. Hopefully it will appear in more people's recommended tabs. Now, because of this, I have seen people who at the very bottom, they'll put in the description of the video, and then they'll tab down, and they'll say, this is for search engine optimization only. But blah, 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 blah. And so it would appear in the description, and that would alert the search engines to it. I'll take a look at the tabs again, because there used to be, you could type in, you could type in your own tags, or you could type in like REP and then Republican would come up. You click on that. So I have to check on that. And then also he says, thank you again for the advice with my friend. I hit him with a hard ball that he needs medication, and he seems at least to be changing up his lifestyle. We shall see how he progresses. And thank you again for caring about your fans like you do. Tell Natasha hi from the Strata crew as well, please. Thank you. I will do that. And then there's a song joking about Khrushchev. Here's one more little piece of information. If you've already given him the pitch and he's still wavering, Ray, you can tell him this. You can tell him, listen, there's no reason why you can't stop. These are not addictive chemicals. Why don't you try it? I mean, if you think that they're either not going to work or if you don't want to be dependent on them or whatever the case may be, whatever is holding you back, why don't you do me a favor and do yourself a favor? Why don't we just agree to this? Why don't we just agree to 30 days on it, right? 30 days, that's all. I would say a week, but it takes a while for these levels to come up. Why don't we just say, hey, how about we agree for my sake and your potential sake? Look, maybe you're right. It's entirely possible you're right. If you go on it for 30 days and you don't feel any better, or it doesn't seem to have any effect, I'll stop arguing about it. I'm just trying to help. That's what I would do. I would definitely do that. I would just simply say, hey, it's not difficult to get a prescription. You will need to go to a psychiatrist rather than a psychologist. If it turns out he has a problem going to a psychiatrist, go pull out the insulin analogy and just say, it's not only possible, pal, but it's likely that that these behaviors, you're responsible for them, but you're not causing them. You're responsible for your actions, but you're not doing these things on purpose. You could be just a quart low on serotonin. I was 3 quarts low. Your body's not producing what it needs. If you have diabetes, you're not producing insulin, and insulin will save your life. If you've got some of these problems, it's because your brain's not making enough serotonin. Serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Yes, that's right. So what the drugs do is they don't manufacture more serotonin. The SSRI is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which basically means that the process of taking serotonin out of your system, so you don't get too much of it, we're going to inhibit the uptake, which means that you're going to have higher levels of serotonin. It's not a serotonin pill. We're just going to slow down the ability of your body to break down serotonin. And having met serotonin, I can tell you she's a lovely individual and is one of the nicest people I ever met. So I would go with that. Where's the harm in a 30-day challenge? If it turns out that I'm right, you'll feel much, much better. And it's not a question of winning an argument. If it turns out you're right, that either they don't work, or you don't want to do them, or you don't think they're effective, then I'll shut up. That seems like a pretty good argument to me. I don't know how. I think if somebody's not willing to do that, then there's other issues at stake here. Then it's almost maybe a point of pride thing, Have you tried telling him, under no circumstances should you ever try taking Prozac? I absolutely forbid it. Have you given that little resource a try? Works with some people sometimes. Okay, I think I've got one left here. I just got a call from my wife, a text from my wife, saying she's ready to go. We're going to do a little Home Depot trip. Just check. Sorry for the talk amongst yourselves here. Just want to make sure it's still open. It's 8:30 local here. They used to close at 11. I think they might close at 10 now. Closes at 10. Great. 1 second. Because I've got one more question left to go, and then we're done. Everybody's happy. Charles Tomes, otherwise known as CP Tomes, from an undisclosed location in flyover country where a balanced budget is required by law. Let me try that again. Take 2, ready, and 3, 2. From an undisclosed location in flyover country where a balanced state budget is required by law, constitutional concealed carry has not resulted in blood running in the streets, and enough Democrats have awakened from the siren song of race baiters and liars running the DNC that the entire murder of crows, no wait, that is our elected representatives, senators, governor, and attorney general, all actual conservative Republicans, Darth Chuck the Merciless opines. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight, so I'd like to thank the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible, and also there are 2 aspects to the flood of illegal immigrants SNF is letting in. They will impact census numbers and slow the reduction in House seats from blue states losing population to red states as rational citizens leave. Yes, correct. The second aspect is different, and where Sniff and his puppeteers have made a fatal miscalculation. Aha. The criminals and useless that arrive will likely not vote or remove themselves from the voting for local and state election population by committing crimes or getting convicted and losing voting rights. Correct. But Sniff has grossly overestimated the faction that will vote Democrat. I agree. Rational adults will not vote for the same catastrophic delusional policies that resulted in their home country becoming hell on earth, that they were willing to risk death or worse to travel to America. Discuss. This is a nice tie into what I said a few minutes ago, having not read this question. Immigrants used to want to be Americans. Now they're people that just want to come to America. Here's the thing about it, though, Chuck. It's not a question of whether they're going to vote Republican or Democrat. They're not going to vote at all. This idea that these gangbangers and all the rest of these MS-13 guys are going to shake hands with Democrats and make some kind of deal where if they come into the country, they're obligated to vote for. They're not going to vote. They're not going to vote, even if they say, hey, you know what? We made it so that you don't even need ID. Just go down and fill out a piece of paper. They're not going to vote. These people aren't going to go down and do that. They're not here for for the civic benefits of living in the United States. You're right. He's completely miscalculated. He's completely miscalculated. By flooding the country with illegal immigrants, all he's going to do is turn blue states redder, not just because he's going to make it more unlivable in those states. Those states are going to experience skyrocketing crime, and the next thing you know, California is going to elect somebody like Steve Garvey to be a senator because we've had enough of this garbage from these idiots. And all Californians need is somebody with a good haircut, and they're in, which is my cue to say, hey, my Senate bid is lined up. We'll have two senators from California, both of them be conservative Republicans, me and Steve Garvey, like this. That's why I'm wearing Dodger blue today, by the way, you may have noticed. Okay, well, I got them all, and all the rest of it too. So my lovely wife is on the way. I'm gonna go get some thin slats of wood to create some armature so we get Gorn back on his feet again. A couple of other local inhabitants that we have here. Start getting this thing ready for the next big step. So P7 2017 says, what's to be gained by making cities unlivable? I heard this from Tucker Carlson. He was the person that made sense out of it. He was talking about New Orleans. And his argument is, and I think he's 100% right about this, P7. He says, you do not understand it. Yes, you don't. You don't get it because you've got a soul and a spirit and you look to the future. But the entire idea is, if you drive the reasonable people out of your state, then you get people voting for Democrats forever. Forever. If you chase business people out of the state, you are left with nothing but people dependent on the state. Those people are Democrats. So yes, you destroy the state. Yes, you destroy the tax base. Yes, you destroy civility. Yes, you make it a horrible place to live. They don't care about any of that. They get to vote themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars for their retirement money, and that's all they care about. They don't care about any of it. The things that you care about, like, is there a future for the city? What about the people who live there? They don't give a shit about any of this stuff at all. Doesn't even enter their heads at all. They don't care. They just don't care. What they want is they want their money and their power now. And if it turns out that things go so south, then they'll move too. They're the most, we can't fight them because we cannot conceive of being that evil and that mendacious and that malicious. That's why we're in trouble. Because we simply have to think, well, what's the reason why they're doing this? They're doing this to enrich themselves. They're doing it to enrich themselves. And they can't enrich themselves unless they can get reelected. And they can't get reelected if there are people who have reason and have education and have something at stake. So we'll scare those people out, and then we'll live here, and we'll continue to vote ourselves as much money as we want to. And if the place goes to utter hell and becomes Mogadishu, that's not my problem. I'm going to live in a gated community. I'm not willing to work hard enough to live in a gated community. I'm not willing to start a new business or to run a business for 15 or 20 years of hard work. Are you kidding? All I have to do is shake a few hands one time. I get elected. Now I'm the incumbent. And then I go to tell people, well, look at what I bring you. And I bring you. Well, there's all this crime. Yes, but here's $50,000 for your dry cleaning store, whatever. Right? That's how it works. That's how it works. This is what we're up against. We're up against cynicism and an utter lack of morality, utter lack of concern, pathological narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy. That's who we're up against. And they're good at it because this is all they do. It's all they think about with their tiny little brains. And it's all they care about with their tiny shriveled little hearts is how they get themselves reelected so they can get more money and more power. And they figured out you could just print money. So as long as nobody's life is getting worse, as long as we're all continuing to get our flat screen TVs and all the rest of these things and our new phones every year or two or whatever, then we'll just shut up and take it. And they've been right. So it's not even like they're winning. It's like there's just a new balance. It's like a new tie, you know, a new draw. It's like the fulcrum has shifted. Now it's like, well, they do have more power than they used to, but we're not being put into gulags either exactly just yet. Yes, they're destroying things like the Boy Scouts, but they're not actually taking my children out and shooting them. So we're in this balance. And we'll see what's going to happen. But it is evil. He says it's just evil, and I do not like having to use that word. I don't like using that word either, but there's no other word for it. When you know that you're causing people's misery, when you know that what you're doing is harming other people, intentionally harming them for your own benefit, when there is an alternative, then that's just evil. That's the only word for it. It's not greedy. Greedy people, like a greedy businessman, is attempting to maximize his income, but he's not doing it at the expense of other people. A businessman can be as greedy as he wants to, but when it's all said and done at the end of the day, the guy who's in charge of Apple Computer can be as greedy as he wants to. He has no coercive power over me. I don't have to buy the product. But if you have a greedy government official, you don't get to move to another city. Not if you're financially strapped, not if you're the people who are really getting hurt. So take care of the richest people in your community. They're not making money they don't give a damn about the economy. Bill Gates' income is not affected by the state of the economy. Well, let me rephrase that. To the degree that it is, it's an insignificant portion of Bill Gates has more money than he can ever spend if he spent as much money as he possibly could. Mathematically, he cannot buy enough things. Assuming he didn't buy 500 of one thing, he cannot buy things fast enough to spend the money he has. And I'm talking about super yachts or whatever. He can't buy things fast enough to spend his money on. He probably can't buy things fast enough to spend the interest on his money. But this is what we're up against. They don't care, pal. And this is why you and I have such problems dealing with them. We think that they're misguided. They're not. The people who are suffering because of them are misguided. They're just plain evil. And that's the only word for it. Because that's the only word that applies. Anyway, Natasha's on her way over, so I better get going because, as you know, when she says, jump, I say, how high? It's like, wait a minute. No, not the guy you think I am. She says, jump. I said, hey. Let's just watch that jump stuff because we're not going down that road. Okay, we got that? Is there something I can do for you? You have to know how to treat these women. And it only takes the average guy about 55 years or so. So anyway, there you go. That'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who continually keep us going here and who we are very grateful to, as always. Thank you very much for the kind words about the stuff that we just did. I like to think that the 4-month, 5-month delay now in things like story mechanics will eventually be made clear when you get to see the finished product, because I'd like to see that finished product finished myself. And I think there's a good chance it's going to happen. So we will be getting those free memberships, limited time memberships for Daily Wire. And I will do them as soon as I'm in place to get going. I'm looking at probably another week or two at the top end, I would say. Starship Livestream, I would love to. Let's see when it goes. and we will take the rest of it as it comes. All right, so we're gonna say goodnight on YouTube first. YouTube, good. Hello, YouTube. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining us right here on your very own Stratosphere Lounge, and we'll see you Monday.